I've known them both for a very long time. You might not think it, but I was the coach of Adam's basketball team when I was 9 years old, and Adam was 7, and he was taller than me then, and he's a lot taller than me now, but he was a bit of a star player. And Carly was one of the first ever people I worked with in the property market, so it's crazy to kind of be up here with you two. So excited to kind of have you guys both be part of it, so appreciate it. Maybe we'll just kick off, Adam, what you guys are up to at Drive, and a bit about yourself and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, look, thanks for having me. Fun fact and story about mine and Mike's relationship. So he didn't cover it, but I will. So we actually grew up in the same small town in New Zealand in a place called Blenheim. And he's right about basketball. We actually played quite a bit of basketball together as well. And Mike had a pretty good jump shot. So if anyone out there is a basketball person, challenge them to a game of one-on-one.
It's overly generous, mate, but I'll take it.
Yeah. A little bit about me. So look, I wear a few hats. So Drive Project Marketing, we're a property sales agency, project marketing, traditional property sales, and property management. So we've got a project that we're currently selling in East Brisbane called the Mercia Residences, 30 stories, 220 units. That's currently in the market. So that's sort of a big focus for us at the moment. My other hat is we also do development under the Saracen banner. So I'm a director of Saracen. So yeah, just sort of merge those two insights together in the sales business, which is helpful. And that's me.
Thank you. My name's Carly Cottam, and I'm Director of Amenity. We're a project sales and marketing agency. We basically operate in Southeast Queensland. Got an office here in Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Quite a strong but very nimble team that we have. We've got about $1.5 billion worth of project in the pipeline. Gold Coast has been incredibly good to us over the past few years, and now really excited to what we'll see and what we'll bring for the Brisbane market over the next 6 to 12 months.
And in the next 6 to 12 months, what do you reckon? What are you hearing at the moment, and then how do you kind of see the remainder of the year playing out?
It's a really strange time in the market. The Gold Coast market keeps going strong. Over the past couple of months, we've seen a bit of a dip in sales transactions. We've seen a bit of an increase in inquiry. It changes from the segment of the market that we're focusing in, and I can delve into that a bit deeper. But over the next 6 to 12 months, for us, we are really trying to ensure that we are looking for the gaps in the market, and we spend a lot of time with our clients up front ensuring that we know where the gaps in the market are, whether that's product specific, price range specific, location specific, and ensuring that we're staying top of mind in regards to that through the sales program. We've got some projects that are live in the market. At the moment, the sales velocity has slowed, and we've seen and we've gauged a gap in our product type, but being able to pivot very quickly is incredibly important. In regards to the segments of market that we're seeing move, we're definitely still seeing the market that's 3 mil plus moving quite well. And what we've seen on the Gold Coast predominantly is it's very much a boomers boom. So our ageing population are obviously, or our baby boomers of the market that hold significant wealth, obviously nationally. We've seen since the RBA releasing the interest rate drop, we've seen a spike in inquiry in our first home buyer, our first time investors, second home homeowners in that $1 to $2 million price range, but transactions really haven't transpired into that market as yet.
So more inquiry, less buying.
More inquiry, less transactions. Yeah. Even since the RBA drop, even though our demographic that's 45 years plus aren't heavily leveraged by a mortgage, we've seen transactions increase in that segment just because there's confidence in the market.
Cool. And what about you, Adam? How are you finding kind of different buyer segments so far this year, and what is the next kind of 6 months looking like in terms of those segments, do you think?
Carly covered, I think, most of it, so it was great. But yeah, look, I think it's a bit of a, let's say, two-speed market. I mean, I think, I've been saying this for a little while. I think that there's only sort of 10 to 20% of the market actually purchasing apartments at the moment, because they're the only ones that actually can purchase, because there's a real lack of purchasing power. The other ones that have owned property, they're already sort of wealthy. They're able to transfer equity to get it into subsequent properties for their kids, etc. So I think the RBA drop, I mean, look, we haven't seen it make a massive difference. I mean, it's just one drop. I think there's, people are very untrusting of the RBA and the government at the moment. So I would say that there needs to be, more rate cuts for that to actually make a substantial difference. But I think there is an opportunity that, possibly at that lower end of the market, and dare I say the affordable end of the market, which is probably sub 2 million now, I think we'll get a bit more volume into the future if there's subsequent rate cuts.
Yeah, and so what are your agent teams kind of saying that, but what are buyers saying when they walk into the display? Because we kind of see the same thing. We saw the rate cut, we saw an increase in inquiry. Anecdotally, it was more, conversion rates are roughly the same in the market from a sales point of view. What are the buyers saying when they walk into the display?
Yeah, it's, similar to what you just said. I mean, I think, look, it's a two-speed market. There is price resistance for people that are sort of, getting into that lower portion of the market, and they're after something that they feel is good value, even though that the market has appreciated significantly. And I think the other portion of the market, they're not price resistant. The sales cycles are longer, and they're just looking for exactly what they want. And so, yeah, it's bit of a mix.
And when people are looking for exactly what they want, are they asking for customization, or is it the fact that they kind of walk in and if you don't have exactly what they want, they're walking back out?
I think it's a multitude of factors. I mean, number one is deliverability. So we just heard it from the developer section. I mean, that's probably the number one concern in the market. There's been lots of projects that haven't gone ahead, so they want that confidence. So deliverability is probably number one. I'd say on the second point, it's lifestyle, external of the project and inside the project, if that makes sense. So I think Brisbane's got a lot cooler over the last, maybe 5 to 7 years. So there's a bit more to do. So I'm just speaking about Brisbane specifically. And I think that they want to be close to those retail hubs. They want to be close to those lifestyle offerings that are important to them, which differs per project. And then I'd say the internal lifestyle is, what is the building doing for me as an owner, right? It's, does it have the facilities that I like? Does it have work from home capability? Does it have all the wellness? And so I think, those are the main sort of two factors. And then the third, I think, price for a specific section of the market is still very important.
How about you, Carly? I know you've converted a bunch of urban.com.au leads at the higher end of the market, and we've had the feedback from buyers and from yourselves. What do you see?
Again, it's dependent on what segment of the market we're working in, but if we're talking about the peak of inquiry that we've seen from the RBA drop, they're coming through the door, or the sales team are dealing with them on the phone. It's very much a research piece for them, so they very much have to be nurtured for a 6 to 12 month journey. In regards to your query about customization, again, a buyer segment where we're working heavily in with their 45 plus, it's 3 million plus product type. Customization is definitely a need from that segment. They're also looking for space, I suppose, over premium finishes. So I think every developer in this room, every developer that we deal with, they know what the standard finishes, appliances that we need within a product, but buyers now are really wanting additional space, flexible spaces, whether it's a MPR that can be, transformed into a work from home space, whether it can be transformed to a Pilates room, a library, a wine room. And we've been selling, I suppose, a lot of projects where it is a full floor home offering, and the floor plate is just very vanilla as you work up, but ensuring that you've got an A, B, C and D variation of that floor plan that's predetermined before you start selling, obviously then save the developer a lot of heartache when they're going through the construction process and pricing.
And you guys have both spoken a bit about the amenity side. Obviously that's there's a trade-off to amenity being, higher strata fees. How do you find that at the moment? What's the vibe from the buyers? Are they saying they are prepared to pay for the amenity, or is it not really a consideration point for them when they're walking in the door?
Again, depends what the audience is. We've got projects that we're selling at the moment where, amenity is a requirement, it's an expectation, and it's very competitive against developers in the marketplace at the moment as to what level of amenity you're offering. So consumers definitely have a level of expectation. If you're Gold Coast to here or in Brisbane, it's the wellness offering that is at the forefront. We've got projects that range from $5,500 per annum to, we're working on a project at the moment in Brisbane where levies will exceed 20 to 50,000 per annum. But there's a level of service that's obviously affiliated to that project. People will pay for service if you're attaching it to the project, because people just want easy lifestyle. Everyone's time poor. But again, it's the audience that you're targeting, and that's then falling into a high net worth or a ultra high net worth audience.
Agree with all of that.
Cool. And so when you kind of go in and you're pitching to a developer, obviously one of the things that they're thinking about is their own feasibility and the price per square metre, etc., that they can attract. How do you kind of go about helping them with the price discovery component, and what do you do if they're being unrealistic?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt there's a lot of challenges in the market. Feasibilities are very constrained at the moment. And so, yeah, pricing's obviously key. I mean, I would sort of work backwards, right? I mean, number one is what does the developer have to sell this at to make it work? Like, I think that's conversation number one, because I think you're probably not going to be able to sell it for what makes it work right away. And so there's a hell of a lot of problem solving that needs to go into the actual project to make it work. So yeah, that's probably where I'd start with that. As far as selling it, as far as pricing, the actual projects as you sort of go along, I mean, obviously there's all the comps in the market that we track that sort of stuff like a hawk, obviously, because we want to know exactly what's going on. But yeah, we also use something else sort of interesting in our pricing model, like for example, that we're using a Python-based system, which is sort of like a little bit of AI, which sounds a little bit crazy, but it also stress tests, I guess, manual assumptions of what we've put into a pricing model. So we add variables, it spits out a report, and then we compare and contrast against it. So that's just something a little bit different that we're doing in regards to pricing.
Interesting.
If you asked me 3 years ago and we said reverse engineer a project, I would absolutely hate that term. But we now have to actually do it because, things won't get out of the ground unless we know what a developer needs to make it work from a construction point of view. So a lot of the time we will reverse engineer it, we understand what the rate per metre that they need to make it feasible for them at that point in time. And then we'll be stress testing product type versus sizing, and then the pricing thresholds that we're seeing in the market. But data is everything that you need to rely on. We accumulate data from every project that's in the market. We are watching everyone. And we use that to then how we're actually advising to a client.
I guess one thing that's kind of hard to quantify, but obviously has a pretty important impact in terms of the sell-through of a project, relates to brand. Like a well-known developer and versus kind of someone starting afresh. How do you kind of think about the brand piece, and what do you do if the brand's great, and what do you do if it's someone earlier in their process?
If the brand is great, there's probably not a great deal that we need to do, but it's probably just looking at, okay, what are their past projects? Who have they targeted previously? Are we targeting a different audience or segment of the market for this next project? Do we need to pivot in their tone of voice in the market or how they're positioned? If they haven't got a huge track record, then we would ideally lean on who the consultants are. So who's the architect? Who's the landscape architect? Are we involving an interior designer? Do you have a build partner? Are you building yourself? We put a lot of work up front in regards to the strategy and how we position them in the market, and that a lot of that is leveraged through PR. We all know that it's a lot of it can be smoke and mirrors at times as to what you're putting out in the market, but there's been many times that we've rebranded some of our clients to ensure that they're actually putting the right step forward when they launch their project.
Yeah, I mean, not too much to add there. I sort of agree with everything Carly's saying. But yeah, I mean, obviously brand's important. You leverage the outside consultants if you don't have it yourself, I think, to, run your process. I mean, I guess the counter to that is that the product really takes precedent, right? Like if it's in the middle of nowhere, it's going to be pretty difficult, right? So your product is absolutely key where it's located and sort of how you positioned it. And then I think if the market is a bit stronger, it's maybe a little bit less important. If it's a little bit weaker, it's obviously more important.
Yeah, totally. And look, unfortunately, we don't always get the opportunity to work on absolute stellar projects in the perfect location with the right price and the right brand, etc. What's your kind of process if a project's not going according to plan? What do you kind of do?
Yeah, I guess, number one is just you have to try and drill down how is it not actually going to plan, and is it not going to plan? So I think not jumping at shadows, because as we all probably know with projects, they are cyclical as well as the market. So, there is seasonality in projects in the selling process. So I think that's number one. Number two is that you really have to know your numbers, right? So what is your cost per sale? What are your cost per leads? What's your conversion rate? And sort of reverse engineer that back from, how are we actually going in the process? And that goes further down to, what's your ratio of appointments to sales and actually getting inquiry through the door. So, I mean, it's about identifying the actual step in the process that's breaking down and then doing some things to try and rectify it.
Completely agree with Adam. I suppose we're incredibly solution focused, and I think you need to be to ensure that everything is running smoothly and as you planned. Setting a foundation from the outset, knowing what your strategy is, knowing what your targets are so that you've got something to work from, something to optimize from, but making sure you're 2 to 3 steps ahead. Like I've just received approval from another client before I started speaking of version 5 of our price list, and that's that'll be implemented in another 2 to 3 weeks' time. But because we've been able to hit sales velocity and we're already thinking ahead, thinking ahead is part of the strategy. But yeah, ensuring that you can pivot, making sure you're going to a sales meeting and you're coming out of that sales meeting with actionable items. You actually know what's happening in the marketplace. You know what your competitors are doing. You know what will be launching in the next 2, 3, 6 months' time. But it's all data and insights that you'll get from your sales team.
Well, thank you guys both very much. Obviously, one of the reasons we have both of you guys coming up and sharing your thoughts is you do get some of the best feedback in terms of contact rate. And typically what we see, the projects where it's a bit of a struggle street project often have low contact rates from people quickly calling the consumer. So you guys both have great rates. Appreciate you sharing your insight, and thanks very much.